I'm wondering about that too, because I mean, it seems like it would be a pretty good deal. I mean, how much is Greyhound worth? How much could we acquire it for? And think about the benefits that would redound to the government. I mean, what would if you spent some time thinking about what that process would be like?
Yeah, so I think that one thing to say about this is, I think like I mentioned the response in Reason magazine. The other sort of response I saw, the kind of response from the left is like, oh, well, forget buses. We should have like high-speed rail going everywhere. To which I would say,
one step at a time,
I don't disagree. I think that's a great long-term goal. But if you look at different rail, like high-speed rail projects that are already in the works in different parts of the country, they usually have pretty long timelines. And they're costing a lot of money, which is not to say we shouldn't do it, but
totally. But
this could happen immediately.
Exactly.
Right?
And as with those tomorrow. Who have suggested doing banking at post offices, the infrastructure exists now. We wouldn't have to build anything out. It would just be a matter of one purchase, one transfer. So let's walk before we can run. If we can demonstrate that, hey, this is something that works. This is effective. People enjoy this. People get something out of this. This was super cheap compared to all the other stuff that we spend on. Then we can talk about spending money, which would be a hell of a lot more, but would also probably be really well spent on high-speed rail. I think that's a great idea, too. But, let's take things one step at a time. We have this here. We could do this. And what I was reading somewhere online, I don't know if the numbers are current, that what Greyhound is worth, $7 billion or something like that? Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly, I think that, again, given how many stations they're willing to sell to 20 Lake Holdings right now, for example, I think that, I'll bet we could bargain him down from that, but
it would be a rare example of the federal government, getting a good deal on a purchase that it made, because it's something that's going to the public good as opposed to trying to siphon money to a contractor in one way, shape, or form.
which is also, something that's really striking if you think about this, because, to anybody for whom this sounds like, any like readers, people listening, who might not like share my overall, worldview and sort of hear the, nationalize and this sort of, they get visions of
they
Stalin.
Hear the jackboots going in the background.
Yeah. I would say, think about the ways in which things are already transferred into public ownership, right? So the example I use in the article is local governments, building sports stadiums. Yes. If you like any like pretty much invariably you start looking into the history and you'll find some forced sales, right? Through public
as an Oakland A's fan, I'm very well familiar with that process and I've been reading up on it. I actually had someone on the program a few months ago talking about the idea, which is probably too late to be able to take place right now, of keeping the Oakland A's in Oakland by purchasing them through eminent domain, which apparently there is a precedent for. But yeah, the government can step in and do things like that for the public good, and it could probably still give an excellent price to an organization like Greyhound, and then we would have this amazing structure at our disposal, which we could make work better for the public good as opposed to selling it off piecemeal to the lowest bidder.
Yeah, and I think that after the initial purchase, what are we talking about here? I mean, as far as the infrastructure goes, I don't know, some paint to change what it says on the side of the bus. And then you've pretty much got your buses. Now, as a second step, I really like the idea. Bhaskar Sankara wrote about this in The Guardian a few years ago. I quoted in my article that that we could integrate this with the already nationalized federal highway system by having like dedicated lanes for intercity buses.
That's an excellent idea.
Which would both make the trips faster, more pleasant, and also serve as great advertising,
Yeah.
which is which is worth it, I think, on a variety of levels, right? I mean, certainly, again, yes, absolutely, down the line, it's a massive project, but I'm all for high speed rails. But if it until you get that, the environmental impact of buses versus private cars is huge. I mean, that's like it's like an 80% reduction in the climate footprint that comes out of that, right? So I mean, it's definitely worthwhile on that end. And again, I would really push, like, okay, if you think about the kinds of things the government already does, I mean, yes, if you're okay with not you in particular, but the general you, right, are okay with all of the land that was actually confiscated to build your local sports stadium for the current owners.
Right.
Certainly in this case, there'd be no problem getting a voluntary sale. And I would really question, right, like what role you think government should have if you think that government running a bus service is too much.
I can envision already, though. I can see the right-wing campaign. If something like this were to ever happen, you can see the New York Post, running headlines, mass spike in crime on, blood horror on government Greyhound trip or something like that. They would kick that in right away. They would talk about, they would take a reduced crime rate, positing that would be the case. I think there's an argument to be made for that. And take every instance of crime and blow it out of proportion.
I'm 100% sure that would happen, especially because, look, bottom line, people who take intercity bus trips tilt lower income than people who use other forms of intercity travel. That's just true, right? So I'm sure people would be able to, they'd find real instances, and that would become part of the narrative. I also think a lot of people would use it anyway. And you know what? Hey, I have a, like, hire some security guards for the bus. I'm good with that. But they have but also,
you see, that's always existed, and it probably exists.
True, yes.
It probably exists more now because people, as indicated by what's going on with Greyhound, are under like more economic pressure now because the rates are going up, and I mean, if you steal $5 to make up for the $5 that were taken from you, but like in terms of the increase in prices, it's probably like happening now. I don't know if it would change too much if the rates went down.
I'm sure it is, right? And this is and the thing is, right? It's like I think that very fact that it's a form of travel that that is used more by low income people, that it comes with disadvantages, which is part of the reason why, right? I mean, certainly in terms of like if you can't afford a different form of transport, it's much faster, right? Often,
right.
To do that. But that very fact, I think, should make us a little perturbed by how little play all of the Greyhound cutbacks have gotten overall, right? Because if you think back to like a little over a year ago at this time, right, there was that Christmas time travel snafu at the airports, and that was reasonably, I think.
I'm glad Mayor Pete looked into that and he's taking action on it.
Yeah, exactly. So that was like, I think, very reasonably seen as scandalous, that they have, I mean, and yes, I mean, that's, Pete Buttigieg is, like actually had a rule that had been sitting on his desk for proposed implementation for like a year.
Right.
By the time that happened, like stopping the airlines from continuing to sell flights they knew they'd probably have to cancel, and
Right.
that like actually could have stopped that from happening. And so it's like, yes, that was rightly seen as a massive embarrassment.
He needs to look at the overhead bin situation also, by the way, which is completely ridiculous. They fill up these spaces like, and then they make you check your bags anyway.
Yes.
It's completely ridiculous. And I would add that has never been a problem on a Greyhound bus because they put it underneath there. There's plenty of room there. I've never had an issue, and you don't have to worry about your stuff getting lost.
Store it at the side of it. It's like, you like that adds like 30 seconds to the end of your trip.
Exactly. It's very convenient. But
yeah,
Pete Buttigieg really needs to get into that specific situation because it happens like it used to happen every once in a while. Now it happens every single time I take a plane somewhere.
Yeah, no, it has become clear that if you if you don't shell out for the more expensive seat that gets to board earlier, what that means is that like when you consolidate all of your stuff into the one little carry-on because you really don't want to check it, all you're going to get out of that is not being charged for checking it, right? They're still going to gate check it.
Eventually, they're just going to strap us to the wings or something like that if we don't buy a nice seat.
Yeah, no, I feel like I'm going to live to see standing room airplane tickets.
Right. Basically, yes, standing on the other side of the plane, right?
And you should, and like, look, if you're taking, so I think if the sort of travel woes of frequent flyers are seen as a big deal and an embarrassment, for the transportation department, all of that, as they should be, right? I would like it if the discourse spared a little bit more of a thought for the very large number of people who do take advantage of intercity bus travel. That if you can't get where you need to go because they had to cut service to that location because they sold the downtown station to a hedge fund, and now they're going to drop you off in the middle of nowhere, and you have to figure out, where you're going to go, how you're going to go where you need to go. Like that seems like it should also be a problem. But you get the sense that people who write these travel woes stories are often, really writing about like, their cousin, their mother-in-law,
right.
who told them this heroin story about being stuck in the airport at Christmas, and they don't really know anybody who takes the bus.
Yeah, well, that's quite true. I think there's like a whole stratum of America that's essentially being ignored, which makes me think also that if someone were to do this, if some administration or some Congress were to do this, that it would be more difficult for the far right to clap back against it because I don't think they would have any traction there. I think it would be of overwhelming benefit, and I think the fact that that wealthy or upper middle class people couldn't be around to loudly complain about it would be entirely beneficial to our side in terms of getting it done and making sure that it actually stayed in place, because I think it's been a long time since anybody in any sort of position of power has actually taken a Greyhound bus or has any sort of experience with it, and yet that is millions and millions of people. I mean, it's still a huge organization.
It is, yeah. It does remain the case. Even now, I mean, again, that they have something like 2,400 locations. That there are millions and millions of trips a year, and this is again, I would just I would just question, like,